Wealthy people spend their money to earn more money. The majority of everyone else spend their money to buy things, which makes everybody else around them rich.
My truth and my experience has been, I have to jump higher. I have to show up earlier. I have to be the first person to turn off the light and the last person to turn off the light. I have to make sure that every number is correct and every T is crossed and every die is dotted. The way that I show up is by being consistent, so consistent that people cannot doubt your capacity to succeed. You have to work harder than the average person. And if you accept those terms, you cannot complain about those terms. I have only known success on the back of consistency. Do I think you could be a success without being consistent? Perhaps, if you have other resources and tools that I was never given, but coming from where I am, my perspective has only been consistency, and the discipline has been everything that I have ever gotten on the back of doing it again and again and again. It is what I teach. It is what I preach. It is what I believe.
I was working at a financial firm in New York City with a bunch of very smart people. And I had a brilliant boss I much admired. I went to my boss and told him I was going to start a company selling books on the internet. He took me on a long walk in Central Park, listened carefully to me, and finally said, "That sounds like a really good idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job. You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And if you can somehow figure out how to have a calling, you have hit the jackpot, because that's the big deal. Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day." Seen in that light, it really was a difficult choice. But ultimately, I decided I had to give it a shot. I didn't think I'd regret trying and failing. And I suspected I would always be haunted by a decision to not try at all. After much consideration, I took the less safe path to follow my passion, and I'm proud of that choice. As a young boy, I'd always wanted to be an inventor, and she wanted me to follow my passion.
I think the first is, depending on how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. Work hard like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say, particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company.
I think too is you got to make sure that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. And I go back to what I was saying earlier, where if you're a new company, I mean, unless it's like some new industry or new market that, if it's an untapped market, then you have more ability to, the standard is lower for your product or service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and they say, why would you buy it as a consumer? You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. So a lot of times entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better. And it can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better.
And then I think that the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. You don't have, you don't have kids, but as you get older, your obligations increase. And once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
Every time you figure out some way of providing tools and services that empower other people to deploy their creativity, you're really onto something. You know, you're very lucky if you have a career. A lot of people end up with a job. If you don't love your work, you're never going to be great at it. Jules Verne, Mark Twain, Galileo, Newton, all the curious from the ages would have wanted to be alive, most of all, right now.
Nothing is free. If you want to be successful, you have to pay the price. Alibaba, 18 years to today's size. Yeah, we are lucky, but we work much harder than most of the people. We never sleep well and sound in the evening. I traveled last year 867 hours a year in the plane. I'm working hard, my team working very hard. 18 years, we work like a normal company, 70 years, day and night. Nothing is free. Nothing is easy. You have to think different. You have to do different. Early days in my company, when some ideas come to my desk, Jack, this is a great idea, and I look at everybody. Everybody say it is a good idea, I normally throw into the rubbish. Because everybody say it is good, then all the other people think of. If everybody say this is going to be very tough, I'm very interested in that tough question. And I pick up and say, how can we do it in a different way? This is to be unique, to be different. And third, this is my advice, and this is also I'm telling myself every day. Today is very tough. Tomorrow is more tougher. The day after tomorrow is beautiful, but most people die tomorrow evening. You have to work very hard. Every tough days, every tough situations, problems you meet, that is the training of yourself. One thing you are lucky, as I said, if students cannot survive, 99.9% of people in the world cannot survive. Only you have this confidence, you will be able to face the challenge of future. If you 20 to 30 years old, please find a good boss, not necessarily a good company. Learn from the boss, learn how to do it.
In the future, it's not about the competition of knowledge, it's the competition of creativity. It's a competition of imagination. It's a competition of learning. It's competition of independent thinking. If you think like a machine, the problem will come. In the past 20 years, we'll make people like a machine. In the next 20 years, machine will look like a people. So in the future, it's not knowledge-driven, it's the wisdom-driven. It's the experience-driven. In the past, it's the knowledge-driven, and it's the manufacturing-driven, and in the future, it's the creativity-driven.
When you are graduate, when you just in the university, don't think about, I want to resign from the school and be another Bill Gates, because Bill Gates left Harvard. There's only one Bill Gates in the world. When you graduate, find a company. Most important, find a good boss that can train you, discipline you, tell you what is good and right. It's more important than a good company. Of course, a good company, a good boss, even better. And then continue your life.
You want to make a lot of money? You want to be successful? I didn't want to be rich. I just didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to be middle class or lower middle class or mediocre. I just wanted to be great at something. Because I figured out that the people that I saw that were doing great things were fundamentally great at one thing. The analogy I always use is Peyton Manning gets paid $10 million a year. He doesn't get paid $10 million a year to tackle, to kick the ball, to play defense. He gets paid $10 million a year to do one task and do it really, really well. Nobody buys from you. Nobody makes you wealthy because you're okay at something. The world does not reward mediocrity, nor does it reward average. It only rewards exceptional. So you got to find that one thing that you're good at, and you got to become great at it. Because if you focus what you're not good at and try to become good at it, you're going to run into somebody who is going to clean your clock at it. When you think about success and you think about business and you think about being an entrepreneur, everybody wants to talk about the good times. And I always say to people, It's easy to be an entrepreneur when the sun is shining. It's easy to run your own business when there's good cash flow and people love you and there aren't many problems. But have that same desire to do it when your biggest customer just left, or do it when you don't have enough cash to make payroll, or do it when you've got real problems at home and nobody cares. Being a great entrepreneur is the ability to stay focused and highly motivated when there's failure around you. It's not your ability to handle success that'll decide how successful you'll be. It's your ability to absorb failure. Not take failure, not get hit, but absorb it. I mean, absorb it with every fiber of your body. When there are those days where you feel like, I just cannot go on. Get up on those days, get in front of your team, and get them going in the same direction, and be highly motivated on those days. Because if you can do it on those days, you can do it any day.
To say, okay, it's okay to fail because you're going to be loved no matter what. I had to look at it from a long term because I wasn't going to give up on the game.
Right.
So I had to say, okay, this year, I'm going to get better at that. Next year, this. And then so forth and so on. And then patiently, I was able to catch them.